Thank you for joining us with Congregations for Children, the initiative focused on church and school partnerships. In this training video, we will be providing training on building church and school partnerships. If you did not have an opportunity to participate in the Congregations for Children orientation, we would like for you to please review that orientation video as well. As we go through this, we are going to cover steps to initiate a partnership. But this isn't rocket science. It's not tough stuff, and it doesn't necessarily fall in order. So different churches are going to come in and schools are going to come into this process at different places. So we're going to go through some steps. They may not be exactly your steps, but they are things that should be considered throughout the whole process. The first thing that we're going to cover, a lot of churches will and schools will ask about boundaries and legalities. So we're going to cover that component first. And it is critical that as we go into this, that we examine our motives and that we follow the boundaries as the law has determined the boundaries are. So as we're building a partnership, what we must make sure of is that it first has a secular purpose. We are in there to help children read, to get to know children and families, and to engage in a process with the school as a partner in the school. Anything that we do, we make sure that we go through the proper channels to get approval. So if we're going to provide, that's one reason the written plan is so important. It keeps us on track, but it also assures that what we're doing is okay and it has been approved by the leadership of that school. It is illegal to proselytize to children in schools. It is illegal, and what that means is it's illegal to try to change someone to your faith, to try to push your faith on that person, on that child. And we have to stand by those laws and the legality of that. It is legal to answer any question that a child asks. As long as we're not trying to pressure that out of them and that we're being sincere about our motives in our conversations with children. Faith partnerships are to be treated as any other school partnership. So if a school is currently in partnerships with the Rotary Club or another organization or a business, by law they cannot discriminate against a community of faith. And so churches fall into that, and for so long we haven't really realized or understood. Now a school can make a decision that they don't want any partners, and that's legal as well. So it's just, working with that school and making sure that we are that we follow the boundaries that as the law has been established. The first step that we're going to talk about is I hope very easy for you, is prayer. Seriously pray. We're going to ask you to engage your prayer team. If there's not a prayer team, start one. Put this on the prayer list. Ask the church to pray for the church. Where is our response? Where is our responsibility? Where are we called to go with this? But also, who are the children that we're supposed to reach? Help, through the work of the Holy Spirit, let's make sure that we respond to where we're called and who we're called. The next step that we'll talk about is just being sure of the call. There really needs to be a core group of people in the congregation that are committed to this call. Making sure that before you dive in, before you make a commitment, so often we rush to do things. We have this grand idea of building a partnership with a school, but we really haven't prayed through and thought through that process. Make sure that there is just a deep call to that. Once you've reached that point, there should be a phone call to set up a meeting, to schedule a meeting with the principal. The pastor should be included in this, but also laity, to make sure that you have an opportunity to begin to build that relationship and begin to ask the questions and to see what that response is. In some cases, these relationships are there, and in some cases, this is a brand new step. So it will really depend on how many times these meetings take place. Will really depend on where you are in that process. With the principal, when we meet with the principal, one of the things that we would like to do is to identify a contact person. Our pastors and our principals are great and they have to be behind this, but we really need leadership that is someone else probably in the school and laity from within the church that will work together to build this partnership and this team. So as we do this, we many times this is a school guidance counselor counselor, a lead teacher. We've seen a little bit of everything, an assistant principal, a variety of people who will play this role, but this will be our go-to person that we can work with to develop a good, strong plan. In an ideal situation, this person will also build a team within their school that works together within the school that we will all collectively work. The favorite partnerships that I've seen as we've put together and provided training for both groups have been when we had a principal, an assistant principal, a counselor, a lead teacher, a nurse, someone from guidance, and then a nice team of people from the church that came together and really over the first few components of this work together to build something strong. As we began this process and we're building this relationship, we want to make sure the church is aware of the call and that we go through the proper counsels. This may have already happened. In some cases, this may come later. But we want to present this to the broader ministry of the church, make sure what umbrella under your structure that falls under. We want to make sure that it gets added as a budget line item. It doesn't require money, but money typically starts coming in to help support the kids. So where are we going to work this out in the business aspect of the church? We are going to make sure that we have a leader or co-leaders that are lay people that really build this team within our congregations. So these are going to be the planning people that come together, that work, that organize, and participate. Underneath that, they're going to build a team. An ideal team will come from different areas of the church. Perhaps it'll be someone from the United Methodist Women, someone from the men's group, someone from the youth group. It'll be an older member of the congregation Sunday school class, a younger member. So we will have a diverse team of people who will work to plan and then go back to their groups to make sure the communication is provided back into the church. And as we develop that team, that team will work through which school, the types of programs we'll be doing. We want to make sure that team goes through this training process and these steps to develop this church and school partnership. It's also important that team, once the plan is in place, that team develops a communications plan for the church. Now, this obviously varies depending on the size of the church, but in our larger churches, we may have a Sunday morning where leadership from each of the Sunday school classes and groups comes together for a full orientation and understanding the plan. And then monthly, we can send information into them to help remind the classes where we are, what the needs are in our prayers. So just really looking at that team. How do we go deeper? How do we go stronger? How do we get the word? How does our church best respond and hear the plans that we have and get that communication component out? As we're working with the school, these meetings are back and forth. I've seen them happen in a few sessions, and I've seen them take multiple sessions, but you're really going to take time with the school and help the school determine what assets as far as community support do they already have coming into the school. It may be that there's someone running a great reading program that just needs more volunteers that we can plug into, that we don't have to start anything new. Or it may be, if that is the need, that we do have to start that component new. But what we want to make sure is that we are collaborating with other partners in that school if that's possible. So if there are other churches already engaged, if there are other businesses, the PTA or PTO, whatever groups are engaged, we want to know what are those community resources coming in. How can we make sure we're not coming in to duplicate services, to cause more work, but how can we plug in and be a part of what's already going on? Through that process, then we can identify where the gaps are as well and what the needs are. We have resources available to the churches and the schools with planning sheets on how to plan that in writing partnership component that will be available as well through this process. As you're planning, listen to the school. Don't go in with an agenda. Listen to the school, hear the needs. Think in terms of the language of the school and what they need, their outcomes. If we're going to put together a reading program, then we need pre and post scores. We need to look at outcomes. We need to make sure that if we're calling our congregation and our community in, that we are making a difference and it's an impact for the children. If we have food coming in that we've been bringing in backpacks, and we have scattered services. How do we hone that in around a group of kids that we really know we're making an impact? And so these listening and looking at how you may be just rearranging some things and then bringing in other services around that. Under promise and over deliver. Don't make grand promises. Schools have been burned many times by groups who get something started and are enthusiastic. Start small, start small, start small, start small, and make it very deliberate and intentional in the planning phase. Then you're going to educate your membership. One of the challenges that we have in many of our communities where we have 30% of children who are living below the poverty line, sometimes 80% or more in schools that are on free and reduced lunch, is that we very often in our congregations are isolated from the populations of children. And so helping our churches to understand poverty, to understand those components, and any other pieces of this that we realize we need the education, because this is about us growing and us changing and being the people that God has called us to be, and responding. As we have written this plan, we have the plan ready to go and initiate, then we implement the plan. And part of that implementing will be to maintain that channel of communication, to make sure that we are constantly adjusting. That written document should be something that is with us in each of our meetings, that we're making sure that we stay the course, that we're sticking to what we're doing and not starting to get too scattered away from what our original plan is. We follow the chain of command in our schools. If someone has been assigned to us that we work with, we go to them first and we make sure that we follow the proper chain of command as we've been asked to do and invited into a school. As we implement that plan, another component that's really important, we have additional resources on how to build a reading buddy program, how to train those reading buddies, how to manage those reading buddies. This is a critical component. One of the things that we have run into the most as we build church and school partnerships is schools and churches saying, well, we started, but the volunteers quit coming. And I will say that falls back to the management of those mentors. The church must have responsibility and training and support around how to manage their volunteers to make sure that we are providing the support that is ongoing and that is needed. So we have those resources in addition to this training available. Evaluation is critical. Making sure that we are continuing to build. Remember, in the orientation we talked about Congregations for Children being a process, not a program. This is a process of building relationships on every level. We're going to be building relationships with school personnel. We're going to be building relationships with children and family and with one another as we begin to go out of the walls and in ministry together. As we go through that process, it is a process that we want to continue to get deeper and better. We don't want to do it just because we did it that way last year. Did it work? What was the impact? What are our results from the work that we did? And where do we need to go and mold this and move this to get stronger? And then we need to make sure that we're constantly re-energizing our volunteers and making them feel just wonderful about the work that we're doing. There's some tips that we would go through for success, and I'm going to hit those briefly just as reminders. The first one is prayer. We so often think of our congregations as what happens on Sunday morning, but the reality is we have people coming in from businesses, from garden clubs, from all types of other civic organizations, from neighborhood groups. So what we want to consider too is who is your congregation? Where are the people during the week? And what other partnerships could we bring to the table with this to provide the support? So one example would be that in one of the groups that we've worked with, one of the Sunday school teachers was a business who ran banks, and so branch banks. So what he was able to do was allow his employees an hour a week to volunteer with the church in the program. So that really ramped up our reading program and the ability to pull others in. Consider those and consider what other partnerships you can bring. This is about collaboration. This is about bringing people together. This is about letting the world see the church as an anchor, as a place to go for resources, but to be able to work with other groups and other people. If you have relatives in another denomination, in another church, reach out to those people for support and to be a part of the work that you're doing. As we develop our plans and get engaged in the process with Congregations for Children, we have the 4 initiatives, which is, the advocacy and the poverty component, and us learning and listening and responding back, the K-3 literacy, making sure basic needs are met, and family engagement. Another component that very often we consider, if we're listening to the schools, and in many of our very high poverty schools, there's limited parental support, there's limited community support. In situations like that, it might mean that we're also providing support to the staff of a school. Maybe we're providing a meal or those types of things. When we do these types of things, it's important to start first, if we can, with the focus on the kids and then build out to that. One of the things that we've watched with our congregations is that historically, if we begin collecting items and supporting the staff, it's sometimes harder to move to the relational components of the ministry. So as we're doing that, our goal in all that we're doing is to represent Christ out in the world. There can be challenges. Sometimes we've got the school working so many hours just trying to do their job. We're coming in, we have these plans, and sometimes this process takes time to get through. One of the things that we say that I've often said when we begin going into some of the schools where they have not had community support is it's like you have a steeple on your head. And when you walk through, people will say, there goes that church lady, there goes that man, it's from the church, I think that's the preacher. We've just brought people away for a moment from a very hard place to be. And we're representing that. We're representing Christ out wherever we go. So remember to be positive, just to keep it with a lot of love and a lot of compassion and a lot of patience as we walk through building this collaborative and this partnership. When we're building the Reading Buddy program, again, I will say that we'll have resources on the website around how to develop that and how to manage it. It is probably one of the most critical components that I've seen that is necessary for churches and schools to go through to make sure we're developing a good, strong, solid program that will be here for years to come. And as well as the summer neighborhood lunch is making sure that we go through the processes to make sure that our congregations, again, are with people and are being a part of building those relationships, and it's not an us and them that we're setting up. And those are all conversations that we will grow as we look at the first component of us understanding poverty, of us being advocates of the work. For us to really have a voice as a people of God, to have a voice around poverty, we have to understand what these families and children are going through. We have to understand the work that is taking place in these schools. And the more we know and the more we grow and we move through the process, the deeper we can go and the blessings that will follow for all of us. We have follow-up sheets that we'll have on the website as well, planning sheets to take you through samples to use in building that partnership. Please take advantage of the resources that we have available, and please reach out to us if you'd like additional support. We would be thrilled to help you in any way that we can. Thank you for participating in the Church and School Partnership Training for Congregations for Children. We hope it's helpful, and we do hope that you'll reach out to us for additional support if it's needed and we can help in any way. We would love to. We also have an additional video that will provide tips for schools that are participating in church and school partnerships. So please know that that resource is available as well. Thank you so much.